Italy. It's a country of culture, great food, hairlines being drawn on with a black Sharpie pen, but it's also a country of footballing greatness. 4 times World Cup winners in 1934, 1938, 1982, and 2006. The Azzuri have given us some incredible footballers like Paolo Maldini, Gianluigi Buffon, Pirlo, Baggio, Totti, and then they've also given us some players like Matteo Darmian. Oh. Now, the slight issue for Italy recently is there's been a few too many Darmians. Despite winning Euro 2020 versus England, Italy haven't qualified for a World Cup since 2014, where they went out in the group stages. Meanwhile, there's already question marks about them qualifying for the World Cup of 2026 after they were absolutely battered by Norway. So it's a pretty simple question. What the fuck happened to Italy? Expected hand gestures per capita? Through the roof. Expected goals? Not quite as through. No, there's none of those. First of all, lads, let's try and hit 7,000 likes for this video. I'd massively appreciate it. If we do hit 7k likes, I'll make a video about whatever is the most requested nation in the comment section and why they're shit or good now. Meanwhile, we're hoping to hit 750,000 subscribers too, so click that subscribe button. I'll be testing out my knee when we hit it. Today, though, we're talking about Italy. Forza Ferrari and all them, man.
Let's add that to the words of wisdom.
Who, as I mentioned in the intro, just got smoked by Norway. Man, it has been a pretty dark week. If your surname is Azzuri, and you've also got a beard, and you're probably about to get like a senior citizenship card, you're 3-0 down at half-time. Norway just eased up after that. These lot just got smoked by Sander Berge. All of Norway's front three scored. I'm talking Erling Haaland, Alexander Sørloth, and youngster Antonio Nusa. They probably had a 17-year-old regen striker on the bench, raring to get a goal contribution as well. Speaking of the youngsters, and Antonio Nusa really is a baller of the future for Norway. Bastoni was petrified with PTSD watching another forward with melanin run towards him after the Champions League final. Tonali got absolutely ran through and then had to watch Martin Odegaard put pineapple on a pizza afterwards. Never before have I seen a team unlikely to qualify for a World Cup after only playing 1 game, but that's the situation that Italy find themselves in. A, because, well, they got beaten heavily by Norway, so they are now pretty reliant on goal difference or another team providing an upset against Norway. And also B, because, well, now Norway, who have played significantly more games, they played 3 games in comparison, have won every match they've played in. So they're already 6 points behind and massively on the back foot. Don't ask me how that scheduling works, by the way. I don't know how one team could have played one, and it's the Nations League, but it's woke nonsense. Back in my day, everybody played at the same time, fam. Everyone was on BBC One at the same time, fam. I'm an unk. You have to understand this. It means there's already no margin for error, and it was equal disaster for their manager, Luciano Spalletti, announcing that he'd been sacked in his own press conference. Honestly, I don't think they'd even sacked him. I just don't think he could be asked to walk into Italian training every 3 months and look at Davide Zappacosta. Him still playing right wing back for Italy in big old 2025 is absolutely criminal. I know he was good for Atalanta in their Europa League run, like last season, but it's Davide Zappacosta. That guy got run out of Chelsea like, what, 8 years ago? On my days, as I'm recording this video, they're 3 minutes into a game versus Moldova. They have the opportunity to do the funniest thing. And to be honest, I think their actual team is something that we need to zone in on, because I'm not gonna lie to you, it's pretty whelming. Like, it's not overwhelming, it's not underwhelming. You're left relatively whelmed when you look at Italy's squad. So the lineup, obviously Gianluigi Donnarumma in goal. Just won the Champions League, can't really complain there. He might have looked like a scarecrow with polio in the first half of the season, but he really collected himself back together again to be the big moments goalkeeper that we know him as. Back three, Di Lorenzo, right? How old? Di Lorenzo's 31. He's also really a right back, in my opinion. He's not a centre back, so that's the first issue. Then we've got Coppola, who, to be fair, is a young 21-year-old option, and Bastoni, to be fair, very solid centre back. Zappacosta at right wing back, Udogi at left wing back, Barella, Ravella from Lazio, then Tonali, Raspadori, and Retegui. There's a couple of youngsters in there. Coppola, I think, is on the radar of Brighton. They want to sign him at the moment. Destiny Udogi may have just guided Tottenham to 17th, but is still a young option who might be a bit rash, but he's got something about him. In midfield there, you've got Tonali and Barella. Tonali, who is probably one of the midfielders of the season in the Premier League, especially off the last 6 months. And then Barella, who, again, just got to a Champions League final with Inter. Zappacosta is he's there. And Retegui just finished as the Serie A Golden Boot winner with 25 goals for Atalanta. So it's not absolutely appalling. It's not amazing. It's not world-beating. But there's some actually decent players here. But when you look at a bench, I think it really starts to fall away. It's worth noting there are a few players that were unavailable for selection. I mean, if I go into the recent call-ups, you've got Riccardo Calafiori, who's got knees like butternut squashers at the moment. There was also the likes of Manuel Locatelli, who's got 30 caps, who missed out, Lorenzo Pellegrini, Moise Kean, Federico Chiesa, even though he's had a bit of a difficult season. Giorgio Scalvini, for me, is one of the biggest talents as well, youngsters-wise, playing for Atalanta, but he missed Euro 2024 with a really bad knee injury. So there are decent options still kind of out there, okay? But this bench is so poor, with the exception of, honestly, Orsolini and Lorenzo Luca. DiMarco, again, just got to a Champions League final, got absolutely ramsacked in it. There's just, like, no actual quality here, really, at all. Even if you could say that you could pick out a little bit of depth there, let's be honest, it's absolutely nowhere near the golden age of the late 90s and the early 2000s. There's no Totti equivalent. There's no Zambrotta or Maldini equivalent. There's no Cannavaro or Nesta. There's no Pirlo, and there is absolutely categorically no sort of Alessandro Del Piero. Crucially, there are very limited options going forward, in my opinion. As I mentioned, Retegui was the top goal scorer in Serie A this season, had a very good campaign, but he's had to beg him not to be Argentinian by offering him free Zizis for the rest of his life. And Zizis isn't even that good. That's all they had at their disposal.
I'm leaving here with some.
Lorenzo Luca, an option on the bench who I actually thought was younger, but has just had a pretty decent breakout season for Udinese. Tall, physical, aerial threat of a striker, and he could be the future, but it's not generational at all. You've got Lorenzo Luca playing for Udinese, you've got Retegui, he's actually Argentinian, and Napoli's backup at second striker in Raspadori. Italy are a heritage footballing nation. They shouldn't just be rounding up a group of forwards, one of which isn't even from there. Nothing against that, by the way, but when you're naturalizing strikers and stuff like that, rather than they just decide to be Italian, it's a bit of a techie one, but you shouldn't have that. A youngster in Luca in his breakout season, and Napoli's leftovers as your attacking options. You're Italy. But as I said, should we expect this? This shit's been going on for a while. Italian fans, I'm genuinely sorry. You know, I know there's PTSD. Actually, fuck that. Euro 2020. I'm not sorry at all. Where were you in 2006? Primary school? Nursery? Somebody's ball sack? Well, if you're Italian and you weren't in somebody's ball sack, then you probably experienced an iconic World Cup moment. As while Zinedine Zidane was burying his eyebrows into Marco Materazzi's ribcage, Italy were becoming champions of the world, beating France in the World Cup final in Germany in 2006. It was World Cup glory for Italians, and it was also the last time they played a knockout game in the World Cup. Yet, genuinely, Italy have not played a World Cup knockout match in 19 years. And that run started with a 2010 World Cup in South Africa. Marcelo Lippi was back for another run as Italian boss after a kind of disappointing Euro 2008. But in the years that he'd been away, he'd not really acknowledged the aging squad. He thought a 36-year-old Fabio Cannavaro could still kick it, when in reality, he had to kick his pelvis back into place. A lot of the key members of the 2006 squad had retired internationally, or they were on critical life support, and youngsters were controversially not included. That told, as they somehow managed to finish bottom of a group that had New Zealand, Paraguay, and Slovakia in it. I'm pretty sure current Southampton would finish like second in that group. It would be an absolute disaster, but surely it can't get any worse.
It can.
Now it's time for the 2014 World Cup, and it's a real generation switch now. We've got the likes of some youngsters like Mario Balotelli, Lorenzo Insigne, Marco Verratti, and some of the crew that had helped Italy to a Euro 2012 final. Mario Balotelli with that iconic moment, the celebration after the goal versus Germany, only for them to get battered 4-0 in the final by Spain. But we don't need to talk about that. Playing Spain in that era was like catching 11 Batmans in a dark alley. You're gonna get beaten up, whatever crime you've done. As for Italy, though, the only thing criminal about them at this point was their performances in World Cups. And with this one being held in the capital, the home of Jogo Bonito, they would pay homage to Brazil by also being absolutely shit in this tournament. They beat an equally shambolic England in the first game, before losing to Costa Rica, before being defeated by Uruguay and finishing third in the group. The final game, in fairness, being very controversial, after Luis Suarez had gotten away with converting Giorgio Chiellini's shoulder blade into a 6-piece Wingstop boneless tender box. Now look, going out in the group stages was bad back to back, but at least Italy can't go out of a tournament before the first round of that tournament. Oh wait, well, why is that cinematic riser in the background?
It can.
So now it's 2018. Antonio Conte had his annual go somewhere, get bored, and then create a diplomatic and political incident before leaving as Italy boss after Euro 2016. That meant a new manager in the form of Gran Piero Ventura, which sounds like a roller coaster park in Florida. He'd be unlucky with the draw, to be honest with you, for the 2018 World Cup, ending up in a group with Spain. They'd finish 5 points behind their bitter rivals and need to go through the playoffs after finishing second in the group. They'd be drawn against Sweden. They were easily the favourites here and were 2 games from greatness until they lost 1-0 on aggregate. How do you even lose 1-0 across 2 games? That doesn't even make sense. How do you not accidentally have a second goal in the tie? Being allergic to scoring goals doesn't really go very well with a sport that requires you to actually score them, and hence Italy didn't even qualify for the World Cup of 2018. This was an unmitigated disaster. This hadn't happened since the 1950s. The manager was sacked, the head of the FA departed, and real change was needed. In steps Roberto Mancini, probably the best Italian manager that was available at the time, and honestly, in the landscape of international football, was probably the best manager available too. He guided Italy to a seriously long unbeaten run in the build-up to Euro 2020 that was actually held in 2021 because a mad virus took over and stopped it from happening in 2021. They'd win all 3 games of the group stages before beating Austria after extra time. Then they'd defeat Belgium 2-1 before a penalties win against Spain to set up a final at Wembley against England. Their record and results suggested this should have happened, but honestly, looking at the squad, you could argue that they were overachieving. And with known terrorist Gareth Southgate defending his way to a penalties loss, Gianluigi Donnarumma would be the hero, and Italy were crowned Euro 2020 champions. But to be honest with you, all this did was paper over the cracks. Italy were getting to the end of another generation. The likes of Giorgio Chiellini, Leonardo Bonucci, who were holding things together really at the back, were aging. The meteoric injury-related fall-off of Federico Chiesa didn't help going forward, and they found themselves struggling to qualify for a World Cup again. Once more going into the playoffs for Qatar 2022, where they'd face off against North Macedonia. Now, I don't even think Mario Balotelli's ever heard of a North Macedonia, or a West Macedonia, or an East Macedonia. But he would know exactly who they were. I don't know why I used him. He didn't even play in the game. But he would definitely know who they were when North Macedonia knocked them out. It was against the run of play. Italy had chance after chance, missing open goals, one-on-ones. But at the end of the day, they didn't take their chances and had missed out on back-to-back World Cups. Even Roberto Mancini couldn't take them through, and he was sacked. It is a devastating run for a nation like Italy. It's borderline become a curse. 19 years since playing a World Cup knockout game for a nation like that is absolutely criminal. If you were born in 2007, by the time the next World Cup comes around, you could be in university and you would have never seen your team play in a World Cup knockout game. Now, what are the reasons for this? What has actually been going on? Because whilst I talked about the drop-off of Italian football, relatively speaking, yes, Italy had some absolutely unbelievable players in the early 2000s and the late 1990s, but let's not dick about. Italy have still had some very strong players since then. Gianluigi Buffon still played through some of that era. There was Mario Balotelli, Davide Santon. No, he wasn't very good. He was not. There's been good players. There's been good managers like Marcelo Lippi, like Antonio Conte, like Roberto Mancini. So the first thing for me, like one major issue is I don't think there's been a consistent source of goals for Italy since quite literally 2006, since the era of like Luca Toni and Pippo Inzaghi, of which who still you wouldn't even say were like the best strikers in the world even at that point. But since the loss of people like Totti and stuff, there's not been consistent goal scoring. Mario Balotelli absolutely lit up Euro 2012, but then has been the most erratic man in the known universe since then, and before then as well, if we're being honest. I touched upon Federico Chiesa a moment ago, someone that I absolutely loved as a cult hero at Liverpool, but who realistically was on course to be not like a Ballon d'Or level winger, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but to definitely be someone that could win like a Serie A player of the season, for example, or like win league titles and actually really contribute to them. Be on the 40-man shortlist for a Ballon d'Or like 3 times in his career. Federico Chiesa was an absolute baller before his knees became chocolate hobnobs. The guy has been constantly fighting for fitness since like 2021, and he's not the same footballer as he was then. Retegui has, again, got a decent record at Serie A level, level. And there have been people before him like Ciro Immobile, I guess like Andrea Bellotti, but Ciro Immobile especially never really managed to convert his domestic goal scoring into consistent goal scoring for Italy. There's only so much you can do by having good defenders, which is in fairness what Italy have had over the last 10 years. The second issue is kind of a weird one. You're gonna have to bear with me on this one, but I do genuinely think it contributes, and that is a lack of immigration. I don't mean to get all political with people, but like when you look at a lot of the nations that have been prospering recently, you can't really just get away with like people who are about like 99.7% from that country. The obvious example is France. You've got a collection of people within the squad who identify as being French enough, grew up in France to want to and be designatedly French. They are. Kylian Mbappe is French, as much as he is also Cameroonian. He has dual citizenship. That's how immigration and citizenship works, right? Just have to be, it's not linear. You don't just have to be from one country. But immigration, for a vast amount of reasons that we're definitely not going to get into in a football channel, has happened involving France quite significantly, to the point where there's quite a melting pot of different cultures and different players that have come from very different areas of the globe. You also have that with England. We wouldn't have had Raheem Sterling if it wasn't for immigration. We wouldn't have people like Bukayo Saka. As of right now, there's plenty of mixed race and black footballers in the England setup. Hopefully in the future, some Asian footballers as well, Southeast Asian footballers representing, who have definitely accelerated the England national team forwards. I mean, where the fuck would we be? In fact, an even better example is where the fuck would France be, actually, the more I think about it. You want to say people like Antoine Griezmann, the Hernandez brothers, but the Hernandez brothers, I don't even have to actually do any like research into them to know that Hernandez is not a French name. And Antoine Griezmann comes from a German ancestry dad and a Portuguese ancestry mum. That level, and I know there will be players in the Italian squad, I mentioned Retegui obviously, who have dual citizenship, and I guess Destiny Udogie as well is like a very obvious example in that Italian squad, but you do have this vibe that everything is very reliant on you being purebred Italian, and it's kind of the same with the league as well. Like if you look at the Italian squad, there's not that many players that even play outside of Italy. I mean, you've got Donnarumma who plays for PSG, you've got Destiny Udogie and obviously Vicario who play for Tottenham. Vicario wasn't in the most recent squad, but you'd imagine he probably would be more often than not. And then Sandro Tonali plays for Newcastle. That's it. That might sound like a good thing on the face of it, but like Italian players aren't exported anywhere. And again, that wouldn't be a massive issue if it wasn't for the third problem that I'm now gonna tell you about, and that's domestic football in Italy. During the late 1990s and the early 2000s, Serie A was the premium division to be playing in. You had the likes of R9 at Inter Milan, Recoba. You had people like Pavel Nedved playing in Serie A, Adriano. There was the people I mentioned before for Milan, like Nesta, Maldini. Cafu was playing in Italy. Man, it was crazy. It was an incredible time. There was just like Italian talent sparking out of everywhere. Not just from Italy, obviously, but these external, like international players coming over to Italy also drove the Italian talent forward and made them improve. Italian football in comparison now is a complete shambles, I'm not gonna lie to you. Yes, Inter might have just made a Champions League final and Atalanta may have won the Europa League final last season, but before that, the actual record of Italian clubs up to maybe like 2018 was kind of poor on the European stage, and that's been because of financial mismanagement, borderline corruption, actual corruption at times, and a lack of furthering and modernization of the Italian game from like a business structure standpoint, to the stage where Italian clubs cannot compete financially with Spanish or certainly English clubs as well. Like the wage bill comparison between Inter and also spending of the Inter squad in comparison to PSG, which I know is a very excessive example because it's Paris Saint-Germain, they've got all the money in the world, but it is very, very telling. This is the best that Italy had to offer, and they're on peanuts in comparison to the actual champions, which is ultimately why they got absolutely battered in the final. And the other problem, in my opinion, with domestic football as well in Italy is I don't think Italian youngsters get enough of an opportunity. Whilst there's been some guys that have really come up out of nowhere and have started, you know, and have played a decent amount, like a Scalvini, that have been able to really show themselves. And well, to be fair, there's also been a couple that have gone abroad, like a Willy Nonto, an Udogie or a Cagliosho. There are some that probably haven't got the opportunities they should have done, and I honestly think that's just been an issue with Italian football for a while. It's something I've noticed with Scottish football as well, is that youngsters just don't ever get minutes. Like, there's always this focus and the overall, I don't know, just vision of football there is that experience is very much needed and counted upon. I think that's why the average age of the Italian national team is often quite old too, which is not a problem. Experience is important, but if you want to have the next generation get the game time that they need, you kind of have to have a bit of a balance. So what about the future? I mean, I've been painting it out pretty negatively up to this point, but there is a little bit of hope for Italian fans. Whilst I don't know what the fuck is going on with the current squad. I don't know whether it's a mentality issue, whether there are just not enough young players, or whether it is due to the domestic leagues. There is at least some hope in the younger demographic and the younger generation as far as Italy are concerned, based on their youth teams. Now, granted, their under-21s have been doing just as appallingly. They went out of the 2023 Euros at the group stages by losing to France and Norway, even though they won against Switzerland. That's not terrible. That's kind of a hard group. They went out the first knockout round in 2021 and went out in the group stages in 2019, but that was kind of unlucky because they did win 2 games in those group stages. At lower levels, though, they've actually been doing very well. They got to the World Cup final for the under-20s, but they also won the 2023 under-19s Euros. So the youngsters, the Italian youth teams, have at least been providing something that would give you a little bit of reason to be excited. There are good youngsters in Italy. Profundi, who plays for Udinese. The Kamada, who's been scoring about 800 goals for Milan every season at youth level. I'll be so real, there's a lot of pressure on him. And if he ever watches this video, I don't mean it, innit, but just cover your ears right now. But there's a lot of pressure on you. He might be the first natural goal-scoring talent that Italy have had who just bangs in goals like it's going out of fashion in literally 20 years. And if he genuinely lives up to the hype that he had as a 14, 15-year-old playing in Milan's youth academy, he could be the one thing that saves Italy going forward. Because again, I just think there is such a lack of wide attacking options, of forwards that are just killers in the area. It's almost like a meme at this point. Italy are just a defensive team. They always produce good goalkeepers. They always produce good defenders, but it's actually true. But ultimately, Italy are suffering from what has just been a systematic issue of Italian football since about 2012. There's not enough money in Italian football. There's not enough in terms of developing footballers. The domestic league has fallen flat on its face and youngsters aren't given enough of a chance. That's gonna have to change, and it's gonna have to change pretty quickly because already they're looking like they're on the back foot for the 2026 World Cup. But what do you make of Italy? Italians, I know you're watching this because you've seen that I've slandered you in the title. What do you make of the situation with the Italian national team right now? Is it savable? Are we overreacting when it comes to 2026 World Cup? At the end of the day, they've only played 1 qualifying game, but things are looking a bit techie already. As I said, let me know down in the comment section below. If you did enjoy this video though, feel free to slap a like on it, and of course subscribe if you are new to the channel. You can also follow me on social media. It is at @theofficialfng on Twitter and on Insta. But it's been a pleasure ranting at you guys today. Have a wonderful day, enjoy yourselves, and goodbye.